So today, after finishing ischemic heart diseases with angina and myocardial infarction, we are going to look into the rheumatic heart diseases, right? Rheumatic heart diseases. So ischemic heart diseases, I hope we don't have any doubts regarding ischemic heart diseases. So what is rheumatic heart diseases? And before knowing the rheumatic heart diseases, we should know what is acute rheumatic fever. So basically this acute rheumatic fever, it is a childhood disease, but we are still studying it as it leads to heart diseases in adult. The acute rheumatic fever in children leads to the rheumatic heart diseases which manifests in the adult age. So before knowing the acute rheumatic fever, let us know what is pharyngitis, because this acute rheumatic fever is related with pharyngitis. So we know what is pharynx and what are the different types of pharynx: nasal pharynx, oropharynx, and laryngeal pharynx, right? And this pharynx is considered as an upper respiratory tract, URT, upper respiratory tract. So upper respiratory tract, pharynx, and the larynx up to larynx, it is upper respiratory tract. So you can see the quick anatomy here. This is the oral cavity. Oral cavity is leading into the pharynx, right? This is epiglottis, right? And this is the nasal cavity. This is the soft palate, right? And this one is the hard palate. The hard palate is followed by the soft palate, and then the epiglottis. Epiglottis covers the trachea, and behind the trachea is the esophagus, right? Pharyngitis. Pharyngitis is inflammation of the pharynx. It is the most common condition encountered in the primary care. That means in a clinic, the most common cases are of pharyngitis, which is also called as sore throat. So it is painful inflammation of the pharynx and back portion of the throat that includes the posterior third of the tongue, soft palate, and tonsils. Most commonly, children are affected. Why children are affected? Because children don't have humoral system of immune system. Humoral immunity they don't have. They don't have well developed antibodies. So children are more infected with all types of infections, viral and bacterial. So this pharyngitis, the causes can be viral and the causes can be bacterial. In viral, the viral causes, for example, most common adenovirus, influenza virus, Epstein-Barr virus. If you remember, we have studied this Epstein-Barr virus in the virus group of infections, where we studied mononucleosis or glandular fever, which happens because of the Epstein-Barr virus, which causes the common symptom is pharyngitis. Also due to herpes simplex virus. So these causes are mostly benign and they are self-limited, right? They get treated on, or they get corrected on their own. The another cause for pharyngitis is bacterial pharyngitis. Bacterial pharyngitis is not a very common pharyngitis cause, whereas viral causes are more common. But among all the bacteria, the most common bacteria which causes pharyngitis is group A streptococcus, also called as GAS. Group A streptococcus. This group A streptococcus has been named differently. It was previously called as GABHS, group A beta hemolytic streptococcus, and now it is also called as Streptococcus pyogenes. So this pharyngitis have symptoms of dry cough, fever, vasodilations, edema, redness and swelling in the tonsillar pillars, right? Inside of the throat, it appears red and swelled up. Uvula and soft palate, they are inflamed and they are reddish and they are inflamed. They are having edematous swellings. And also there is a creamy exudate which is present in the tonsillar pillar, which is called as tonsillar exudates. So tonsillar exudates is the characteristic feature of group A Streptococcus bacterial infection. Tonsillar exudates. Exudates means a creamy layer or a creamish substance at the tonsils. Another features are lymph node enlargement, especially the anterior cervical lymph nodes, right, at the neck region, they are enlarged. Throat cultures are done for investigations, right? We take a swab and we place that swab. We take a swab and we take a sample from the tonsillar region and we send that for culture and we see the bacteria in it. And also there are rapid antigen detection tests. We have rapid kits in which rapidly within few minutes we can identify the bacteria with the help of the antigen over it, right? So throat culture and rapid antigen detection tests are the investigations. Right, where is the pharyngitis? Oh, we don't have pharyngitis. In the end, we will see the tonsillar exudates. So these tonsillar exudates, they are creamish layers or creamish substance over the tonsils. The tonsils will be inflamed and there will be creamish substances. Let me just show you. So you can see here, right, these are the tonsils which have been enlarged and this creamish layer over it is because of the Streptococcus bacteria. So if something like this is seen, we call that as tonsillar exudates. The only exception is mononucleosis. The Epstein-Barr virus also causes some pus pockets here. Some tonsillar exudates are also caused by virus, right? But if something like this, if some tonsillar exudate like this is seen, we suggest that it is a bacterial infection. So let us come back to the pharyngitis. Tonsillar exudates. So how do we diagnose the group A Streptococcus pharyngitis, also called as strep throat? Strep comes from the word Streptococcus. So number one, tonsillar exudates. If somebody is having tonsillar exudates, the reason could be viral, the reason could be bacterial. In bacterial, it is a creamish layer. In tonsillar exudates, in viral infections in Epstein-Barr virus, it is more of a nodule, a pus nodule, right? So tonsillar exudates, the point is number one, we give 1 marks to that. Cervical adenopathies, we give 1 marks. Fever greater than 38 degrees Celsius, we give 1 marks. Age is very important because in small children, in childhood age only, this bacteria, they infect more. In adults, these bacteria cannot infect because the body has already developed antibodies. So 3 to 14 years is the age. 3 to 14 years, if somebody is having a sore throat, we give 1 point. If age is 15 to 44 years, we give 0 points. If age is greater than 45 years, we give -1 points. And absence of cough is also considered as positive 1 point. So if somebody is having 2 or 3 of these features, for example, if somebody is having tonsillar exudates plus fever, so we will add 1 plus 1. If somebody age is also in this category, 3 to 14, we add 1 more point, it becomes 3 now. So if the cumulative score is 0, we don't do any testing and we don't give any antibiotics, we just give supportive treatment, right? Some gargles, some betadine gargles or some salt water gargles or some trifla gargles or with some haridra gargles we give, and supportive treatment only. The fever we give antipyretics. So with supportive treatment only the patient is treated. If 1 to 3 score, we do testing, right? We will learn about the investigations or the testing which we have already seen. We do a throat swab. We take a swab, we put it inside the throat and we send that throat swab for culture and testing. And second is rapid antigen testing kits. We have RADTs, rapid antigen detection kits. We do rapid detection of the Streptococcus bacteria. If the score is 4 to 5, there is no need for testing. We can empirically give antibiotics like amoxicillin, like cefadroxil, like azithromycin, right? Azithromycin is the most prescribed medicine for sore throat, right? But you should know when to give the antibiotic. When the score is only 4 to 5, when only 4 to 5 criteria are present except for age 15 to 44 years and age greater than 45 years, right? So after pharyngitis, let us learn the anatomy and physiology of heart valves. So a heart valve is a one-way valve that normally allows blood to flow in only one direction through the heart. So heart valve is like a door, a door of the home which can be opened only to one side. So just like a door of the home can be opened in only one side, these heart valves are normally opened in one side, which allows blood to flow through them in one direction only. So in human heart there are four valves: two atrioventricular valves, two AV valves, and two semilunar valves, SL valves. So these two atrioventricular valves, as the name is suggesting, they are between atria and ventricles, atrium and ventricle. So one is called mitral valve and the other is called tricuspid valve. So mitral valve is also called as bicuspid valve and the other one is tricuspid valve. So these bicuspid and tricuspid, they are in between the atria and the ventricle, atrium and the ventricle. On the left side it is the mitral valve and on the right side it is the tricuspid valve. Then there are two semilunar valves. These two semilunar valves are at the blood vessels exiting and entering the heart. One is aortic valve and another one is pulmonary valve, right? Which are in the arteries leaving the heart, right? Sorry, both are at the arteries leaving the heart. Aortic valve is at the aorta and pulmonary valve is at the pulmonary artery. Right? So you can see here the red here is the left heart and the blue here is the right heart. Left heart is filled with oxygenated blood. The blue is filled with deoxygenated blood. The blood is poured into the left atrium through the left pulmonary veins. So the left pulmonary veins from the lungs brings the oxygenated blood and pour into the left atrium. From the left atrium, the blood flows into the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle through the arc of aorta, it goes to the all over the body. The arc of aorta, the entrance, the exit, or the first point of the arc of aorta is guided by the aortic valve, right? Similarly, the left heart, the inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava drains the blood into the right atrium, and from the right atrium the blood flows into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle it flows into the left pulmonary artery into the lungs. The left pulmonary artery is guarded by the pulmonic valve, pulmonary valve, and the atrioventricular valve in right heart is the tricuspid valve. In left heart it is the bicuspid valve. So bicuspid or mitral valve in the right heart, and in the left heart it is the tricuspid valve, right? Mitral valve. Mitral means mitra. Mitra means dost, right? So friends are only two. Two are called as friends. Three friends are called as evil friends. So two friends. Mitral valve is bicuspid valve. There are only two cusps, right? So you remember like this: left side is the good side, the oxygenated side, and it is friendly. It is mitral valve, and the friends are two. So it is bicuspid valve. So you can see here the blood is pouring from the pulmonary veins into the left atrium. From the left atrium, the blood is going to the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, the valve, this atrioventricular valve on the left side is bicuspid or mitral valve. From the left ventricle, the blood is flowing into the arc of aorta, right? And the valve here is aortic valve. In the left, the blood is pouring from the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava into the left, into the right atrium. The right atrium, the blood is going into the right ventricle. Right ventricle, the blood is going into the pulmonary, um, what is this? Pulmonary artery, and the pulmonary artery is guarded by a pulmonic valve, right? So learning more into the anatomy of heart valves. Heart valves are situated around the fibrous rings called the annulus rings. There are rings on which these heart valves are placed, and those are called as annulus rings, fibrous rings. Those are fibrous rings. They are made up of fibers, and then these valves have flaps, right? Loose flaps, and these flaps are called as leaflets or cusps. In right heart, we have pulmonary valve and tricuspid valve. Pulmonary valve has three leaflets or cusps. Tricuspid also have three leaflets or cusps. In left heart, aortic valve also have three leaflets or cusps. But the mitral valve is the only valve which is called as bicuspid valve, which is called as bicuspid valve because it has two cusps, the anterior cusp and the posterior cusp. Whereas aortic and pulmonary and tricuspid, all other valves have three cusps, three flaps, right? These valves, they are anchored to the ventricles with the help of chordae tendineae, and these chordae tendineae help them not to invert back, right? They hold them in their places. They are like ropes which bind these leaflets. We will see one picture. And these chordae tendineae are attached with the papillary muscles, right? And there are commissures where these valves or leaflets touch each other. So you can see here, this is a diagrammatic presentation. So this is an atrioventricular valve, right? The mitral valve, the bicuspid valve, and the round structure is annulus, right? Annulus is bound by the chordae tendineae, the rope-like structure, and these ropes are bound by the muscles, and which are called as papillary muscles, right? Papillary muscles. So this is the cross section of an aortic valve. Aortic valve has three cusps: the right cusp, the left cusp, and the posterior cusp. These cusps, the dividing of the one cusp to the another, or the touching area of one cusp to the another, is called as commissure, right? So it is mounted over the annulus, and they are touching each other and the junction is called as commissure. So you can see the cross section of the heart here. The cross section of the heart here. So this chamber is the ventricle, because you can clearly see the wall. The wall is thicker here. The wall is thin here. So the thicker wall is left ventricle, right? If this is left ventricle, then this structure is the mitral valve, also called as bicuspid valve, right? So this bicuspid valve has two cusps, anterior cusp and the posterior cusp, right? Anterior cusp to the anterior side. You can see this is the anterior cusp, and the posterior cusp to the posterior side, right? Posterior cusp. Similarly, this is the right heart, and in right heart, this valve is the tricuspid valve. This tricuspid valve has three cusps. One is anterior cusp, one is going to the back, the posterior cusp, and the number third is the septal cusp, right, going to the septum of the heart. Similarly, this is the semilunar valve. This is the pulmonary artery which is exiting, and this is having a pulmonary valve. The aortic valve is somewhere here, it cannot be seen, and this pulmonary valve has left side, right side, and one anterior side, because this is on the anterior leaflet, so not side, leaflet. So left leaflet, right leaflet, and anterior leaflet. Similarly, the aortic valve has three leaflets: the left leaflet, the right leaflet, and the posterior leaflet because the aorta is at the posterior side of the heart, right? So what we have learned, the annulus, the ring, this ring here is the annulus on which this valve is attached. This cusps, right? The cusp, the anterior cusp, the posterior cusp, and the anterior cusp, the posterior cusp, and the septal cusp, right? And the commissure, these two walls are touching with each other, right? The anterior valve, the posterior valve are touching with each other. That is called as a commissure, the junction. Then the chordae tendineae, these small rope-like structures are chordae tendineae, and below these chordae tendineae, these are papillary muscles, right? You can see papillary muscles here, the red color, the papillary muscles, right? So this is the, in short, anatomy of the valves. So you can read much more here, right? This is how from the top the valves look like when they are closed, and this is how they look like when they are open, right? And the closure of the valves makes a sound which is called as S1 sound and S2 sound, which we can hear through the stethoscope as lub and dub. So when the AV valves they close, the sound generated is called as lub, and when the semilunar valves are closed, the sound is called as dub, right? So the closure of the valves makes the sound, nothing else, because the valves they hit with each other, the leaflets of the valves they hit with each other with pressure, and that creates a sound which is called as lub and dub. The AV valves they generate, both the AV valves, the mitral and the tricuspid valve, they generate a lub sound together, whereas the semilunar valves they generate the dub sound, also called as S1 and S2 sound. So let us learn what is acute rheumatic fever. So a child of age 5 to 14 years walks into the clinic, right, with the complaint of the pharyngeal infection, right, sore throat. The throat is paining, the child is not eating anything, and there is high grade fever, there are tonsillar exudates, and you label the child as strep throat, the throat with streptococcal infection. You send the the throat swab for culture, and you also do the rapid detection test, antigen detection test. Excuse me. Right. So that is streptococcal infection of the pharynx, also called as strep throat. Now that strep throat can lead into a particular rheumatic condition which is called as acute rheumatic fever. Now this acute rheumatic fever is a misnomer, right? Not only fever, but there are certain other manifestations apart from fever which can be seen, and sometimes even fever cannot be seen in this condition. So now let us study what is acute rheumatic fever. So acute rheumatic fever is an inflammatory disease, right? First, it is an inflammatory disease which occurs as a sequelae of pharyngeal infection. That means after a child has suffered from pharyngeal infection, right, after few weeks, approximately 3 weeks on an average, after 3 weeks, the child suffers with a disease called as acute rheumatic fever, right? So it is a sequelae or delayed sequelae of pharyngeal infection with group A streptococcus, right? And it is an inflammatory disease. That means inflammation happens in this acute rheumatic fever. So this acute rheumatic fever does not only have fever, but apart from fever, the patient suffers with inflammation of the joints, heart, CNS, skin, and there is some subcutaneous tissue is also involved. So now, why this acute rheumatic fever happens? Basically, it is an autoimmune disease, right? It is an autoimmune reaction. The infection with the group A streptococcus leads to an autoimmune reaction. This autoimmune reaction is non-suppurative inflammation. That means the inflammation caused by this autoimmune reaction is non-pus forming. There is no pus, there is no suppuration, right? 5 to 14-year children are more susceptible because these 5 to 14 years children, they are more susceptible for streptococcal infection, and streptococcal infection with delayed sequelae can lead to acute rheumatic fever, right? This acute rheumatic fever is the most common cause for valvular heart disease, where the valves of the heart are affected, right? So the risk factors for ARF, right? The risk factors for ARF and the risk factors for streptococcal infections, they are the same. So first is overcrowded living conditions, poverty, unhygienic conditions, rural or urban slum residents, right? Rural residents or urban slum residents, 5 to 14 years of age, right? Female gender, females are more susceptible. Failure to seek health care, right? If there is no proper health care, treatment failures, right? And inherited susceptibility, inheritance, the genes also are risk for developing acute rheumatic fever. So now let us see what happens in acute rheumatic fevers, or why this acute rheumatic fever takes place. So after 1 to 5 weeks, approximately 3 weeks of pharyngeal infection with group A streptococcus or streptococcus pyogenes, one and the same thing, the person develops acute rheumatic fever, but only 3 to 6% of the population, that means only 3 to 6% of the cases which have developed a pharyngeal infection with the bacteria streptococcus pyogenes develop acute rheumatic fever, right? This bacteria, Streptococcus pyogenes, also infects other body parts, for example, skin. But rarely these skin infections like impetigo with Streptococcus pyogenes or cellulitis with Streptococcus pyogenes leads to acute rheumatic fever. Right? So this acute rheumatic fever, we are now aware that it is an autoimmune response to the infection. So what happens in this acute rheumatic fever is the inflammatory lesions of heart, joints, central nervous system, skin and subcutaneous tissue. So there is molecular mimicry in the pathogenesis in the development of the acute rheumatic fever. Now how this bacteria can cause autoimmune reaction is via molecular mimicry. This group A streptococcus bacteria, there are variety of strains of these group A streptococcus bacteria, and some of the strains which are also called as rheumatological strains which causes rheumatic diseases. These strains of group A streptococcus has M proteins over their cell wall. So this group A streptococcus, the gram-positive bacteria, these have cell walls, and these cell walls have M proteins over them. These M proteins they behave as antigens, right? The body takes these M proteins and develop antibodies in response to these M proteins and kills the bacteria. But 3 to 6% of the people have these M proteins, the similar kind of M proteins over their body tissues as well, right? So the M proteins which are present in the bacteria, some people, they have the similar M proteins over their organs, over their bodily tissues like heart and joints and others. So the antibodies which are produced for killing the bacteria, these antibodies also start attacking the healthy bodily tissues like heart, joints, right? So this is type 2 hypersensitivity reaction. This autoimmune reaction is type 2 hypersensitivity reaction, which leads to tissue inflammation and ultimately tissue destruction, right? Now type 2 hypersensitivity, we already know it is cytotoxic. It do the destruction, it do the inflammation through the activation of complement system and through the cytotoxic, directly cytotoxic also cells it produces, right? Also with the help of T lymphocytes, the T helper cells, type 4 hypersensitivity reaction also takes place, completing the autoimmune response. Right? So this molecular mimicry, right, the molecular mimicry of the M protein by the bodily tissues, right, only in 3 to 6% of the people, right, leads to cross-reactive immune responses, and these immune responses leads to the clinical features of rheumatic fever, right? So the antibody binding, that is type 2 hypersensitivity, and infiltration of T cells, that is type 4 hypersensitivity, leads to acute rheumatic fever, the features of the acute rheumatic fever. So we can also understand it here. The group A streptococcus, this is the pharyngeal epithelium, the epithelium of the pharynx, throat. The group A streptococcus bacteria comes and attacks it. The group A streptococcus bacteria, the body starts developing an immune response against it, right? The B cells and the macrophages kills the bacteria and takes the antigen to the T cells. The T cells becomes activated, right? The T helper cells becomes activated. The B cells, as soon as they see the bacteria with the help of antigen, right, they start making the antibodies, right? The humoral system and the cellular system of the components of the immunity, they become activated, right? And they kill the bacteria, but few people who mimic these antigens over their body, right? The M protein, few people, they mimic these M protein over their bodily tissues. These antibodies and these activated T cells, they start attacking the body tissues as well, right? So heart is affected, brain is affected, joints are affected, and skin is affected, right? So this ARF have features in the heart, brain, joint, and skin. So it can be summarized as the upper respiratory tract infection with group A streptococcus bacteria, also called as Streptococcus pyogenes. Some strains of this group A streptococcus, which are rheumatogenic strains, right, especially when they attack the children in the age group of 4 to 14 years. These children, the 3 to 6% of these children which are genetically susceptible, which have genes at their HLA, which have HLA group of genes at their chromosome number 6, right? Only those susceptible individuals, which are 3 to 6% of the population, right? That means if there are 100 children infected with sore throat, only 3 to 6% will develop acute rheumatic fever. So after 3 weeks, that is delayed sequelae, right? Delayed response. So after approximately 3 weeks, the person develops acute rheumatic fever. Now, acute rheumatic fever affects 4 major body tissues, right? The skin, first is the joint, second is the heart, third is the skin, and the fourth is the CNS, right? So acute rheumatic fever has manifestations as polyarthritis, right? Multiple joint pain, polyarthritis in 60 to 75% of the cases. Second is subcutaneous nodules. The person will be having nodules under the skin. Third is chorea. We will understand this chorea later. Only in 2 to 30% of the cases, the person develops chorea. Then erythema marginatum, the skin macular rashes, and then pancarditis. 50 to 60% have pancarditis. This will lead to rheumatic heart disease. The pancarditis, the inflammation of the heart, right, or the inflammation of all the 3 layers of the heart will lead to rheumatic heart disease, right? So we will end our lecture here only today. We will continue with the acute rheumatic fever tomorrow.